Hello and welcome. My name is Lucas Lyons, and we got a few things to talk about this evening. First and foremost, Jesus, please allow me to express myself in the correct way. Please allow my message to be received in the correct way. This evening, we're going through a lot, but glory to God. Amen. Secondly, shout out to ADOS, shout out to the new black media. We out here, it's a new age. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family. Let's get into it. What we see here on our screen is Fred Hampton with some other members of other political activist groups, and what he was trying to get something started called the Rainbow Coalition. And that was to have people who are on the margins of society unite for one collective cause, to make the world better, to make their circumstances better. And I bring this up here today because Black people, ADOS, Negroes, are being drowned out in 2022 in the name of a rainbow coalition. Shout out to Joey T. He really illuminated a lot of this. Please go check out his videos. He talks about how what was once considered a rainbow coalition back in the 50s, in the 60s, going into the 70s, in 2022, that is no longer the case. Black people who would typically lead the charge for these movements are being drowned out and being used as political tofu, as Joey T said. Really good analogy. Always black and brown, always people of color, always marginalized. When do you hear specific policies, actions for ADOS, for Negroes? It doesn't happen often because we're thrown into the mix, again, like political tofu, to get things done. And I bring this up because one of the things MLK said was that the situation that Negroes are in can seem helpless, hopeless, but we have to continue to fight on. It's our burden to bear. And it for me, when we talk about racial puberty and how we're going in this racial journey, for me, it is difficult not to become callous to the needs of the many when the needs of, it almost seems tribal, when the needs of Black people, when the needs of ADOS are constantly being put on the back burner, we're constantly, again, being used as political tofu. It really makes it difficult for me to wrap my head around why Black people are not being I mean, I know why Black people are not being prioritized, but it makes it difficult for me to really engage in, it almost makes me robotic to the point where I can focus on nothing but the needs of ADOS because we are not. I hope you get what I'm saying. This analogy of Black people being political tofu to get things done for everyone but Black people, we're left with the tab again, as Joey T says. Shout out to Joey T. It is, his channel's in the description below. It's difficult, which brings me to my next point when we talk about Ukraine. I mean, I think this is a really easy thing to look at. Back in the spring, or when the war was really getting underway, the Senate, largely bipartisan vote, Republicans and Democrats, wings of the same bird. They have no issue passing billions of dollars. We just passed, I mean, late September, $1.1 billion for security assistance. Two days, yesterday, $625 million additional dollars in military assistance. We have no problem. Jerome Powell, when he was talking about COVID aid, we have no problem having, Jerome Powell talked about being imaginative with PPE loans and aid for people. We're being imaginative when it comes to Ukraine and giving billions of dollars. How come this country is not imaginative when there are records, records on the books showing that Black people need reparations. Shout out to Dr. William Darity. There are clear evidence. We don't need no more studies to show that Black people need trillions of dollars in reparations. By 2050, we are going to have zero wealth. This is all well-documented data, all well-documented information. And I need us as Black people to realize this. And it just, again, it seemed like a hopeless situation, but you see that millions of dollars are going to everything but us. It's so frustrating to see this. And I hope that we're all wrapping our minds around this. There needs to be more done. And if you are not registered to vote, I know the midterms are coming up. To my people in New York City, check the link in the description below. I'm going to put a link in there please check out Ballotpedia to see what's going to be on your ballot. We're going to talk about in a future video how we should be voting in these midterms if you're living in New York City, what you should be pushing for in New York City. But we just have to continue to be politically active. I was going to say we got to get politically active. We've been politically active. We've also been sleeping a little bit at the wheel, and we just have to continue this fight. And I'm just using this as an example to show everyone could be imaginative for everyone else, but for Black people. And I mean, it's a shame. There was an anti-lynching bill that has been trying to get passed for the last century that was getting stalled in the House, in the Senate. But it takes no more than a day or two to vote on billions of dollars to go to Ukraine. And again, for a war, that ain't got nothing to do with us. It's akin to if Russia was giving Mexico weapons to say, hey, come join us, come join Russia's federation. Is the U.S. not going to do anything? And that's why countries around the world are looking at the U.S. like, what do we have? We have no horse in this race. The U.S., you do the same thing. Russia trying to do the same thing. These two global powers fighting over what? Over land, over power. It has nothing to do with us, but it has everything to do with us, Black people. ADOS, we got to pay attention to how this aid is being funneled. So when you bring up reparations and you hear these arguments about, well, who will it go to? How will it? It's all been well documented. It's not about a lack of resources. It's about a lack of will. And we just have to understand this. It's taken a century to get an anti-lynching bill. Like, should we be lynching y'all or not? But it takes no time at all for us to give billions of dollars, which is wild to me. Speaking of political tofu in that same vein, here in New York City, there's this private Jewish institution, Yeshiva University. And I bring this up, again, going back to the tofu analogy. Shout out to Joey T. Check out his channel, link in the description below. Yeshiva University halts clubs amid high court LGBTQ ruling. This is in September. Now, so this is a private Jewish institution. Instead of saying instead of saying we are going to allow LGBTQ, because I know it's a hot topic nowadays, instead of allowing those groups on campus, Yeshiva University halts all clubs. So they're saying we're not having no clubs because they didn't want a LGBTQ club. Now they're saying there are no clubs, just so that it wouldn't look like they're discriminating and saying no specifically to the LGBTQ community. I'm not here to say if it's right or if it's wrong, but I want us to consider something. I want us to consider if this was done by any other university in the country, and the hell that would be raised if a university said, you know what? No clubs. We don't want an LGBTQ club. There are no clubs going to happen. No student clubs going to happen now. Imagine the outrage that you would see in news outlets, on Twitter, on the internet, in the streets. Imagine if a historically Black college did something like this. We're already considered a homophobic community wholly, and we'll talk about that in a separate episode. But where are the calls of the homophobia in the Jewish community when you have a private Jewish college saying no to all student clubs? Imagine, I'll do you another one. Imagine if a predominantly Islamic institution said no student clubs because we don't want LGBTQ club. Imagine that. And speaking about the tofu, I want to talk about the lawyer who is the what is it? The prosecutor in this case. The Pride Alliance. This is what the lawyer said, who's trying to represent and say why there should be LGBTQ clubs there. The Pride Alliance seeks a safe space on campus, nothing more. By shutting down all club activities, the Yeshiva University administration attempts to divide the student body and pit students against their LGBT peers. Okay, but this is where we get into the political tofu piece. The university tactics, she said, this is the lawyer speaking, is a throwback to 50 years ago when the city of Jackson, Mississippi closed all public swimming pools rather than comply with court orders to desegregate. This is nothing like that. There were people literally pouring acid in pools. Riots were started. Black people were killed over swimming in the wrong pool, swimming in the wrong, what was it, in Cicero, Illinois, or in Chicago, where there was a riot broke out because a black person swam on the wrong side of the beach. This is nothing like that. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the political tofu. How are you going to compare LGBTQ clubs at a private Jewish institution to American apartheid in the 50s? Those two things are completely separate. But this is the type of thing that is allowed to have happen because of the way that Negroes, ADOS, have been treated in this country from time immemorial. Is it immemorial or memoriam? These types of things are said all of the time, and we cannot let this type of thing pass. There is an interesting relationship between the Jewish community and the Black community, which again will be talked about in a separate episode. But I want us to really focus on this about this. This is nothing like this, and this should infuriate ADOS. This should infuriate Black people in this country. This is not a throwback to 50 years ago when people were pouring acid in pools, people were dying over swimming pools. This is not like that at all. And so this is just really frustrating because, again, when we talk about that Rainbow Coalition, when we are thrown around, when our struggle, our plight, our glories are thrown around like this for the use of what? For the use of what? I got a little hair sticking out. Hope that's not distracting. So this is a prime example of what that political tofu looks like. Don't throw us in there for the LGBTQ at a private Jewish institution. This is two things that are completely separate, completely unrelated. Oh, Lord have mercy. So I really cancels all clubs, but you're going to sit here and say it's akin to Jim Crow, to American apartheid. I think not. We should not stand for that. We should not allow that to happen. I was also going to talk about a little bit, speaking about the Jewish community, I was going to talk a little about the oversight in New York that's going on with the schools. I don't think it's that relevant. Might say that for a separate episode. But what I'm stamping here is do not stand for our plight, our glories, our triumphs. Do not stand for that to be used as political tofu now or in the future. Yeah. So that's all I really had for this episode, is the fact that more and more money is being thrown at Ukraine when by 2050, if not sooner, Black people are going to have zero wealth. We have to continue to make this push for reparations. I want to stamp the fact that Black people have been used. Again, shout out to Joey T. Check his channel in the link in the description below. Black people are being used, ADOS are being used as political tofu too often. And we can't stand for this, and we got to speak up about it. Okay? Last thing is, please check in the description below. Share this with your friends and your family if you live in New York City. We have midterms coming up. There will be letters that you can send, that you can email, print out, send to your local representatives, because there is a proposal coming up that I think will be very beneficial in the state of New York when it comes to addressing the need for reparations for Black people. So keep an eye out for that as well. That is just about all I had for this episode. Shout out to ADOS. Shout out to the New Black Media. Remember, like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. Remember, as Malcolm X once said, the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Bye, y'all.